What's up everybody, Jack File here on behalf of Box to Box Football, coming at you today with a Premier League prediction video. Now yes, I'm well aware that we have a lot going on right now. I mean, Messi, Lukaku, Roma making some moves too, but before Friday I did just want to get my kind of gut feel out there for what the Premier League table might look like come the end of the season. Usually what I like to do in terms of predictions is just do one before the season starts, and then I like to do an updated one when the transfer window, slams shut, because we all know that one transfer can make all the difference. If you see someone like Virgil van Dijk, Bruno Fernandes, etc., and obviously I'm sure some of you know what I'm thinking here, but yeah, Harry Kane to Man City might change things a little bit here. Obviously, you haven't come to listen to me kind of chatter away, so here we go, we'll get straight into it. In at number 20, I've got Brentford. Now, this actually kind of hurts me to do it. Where I've been living kind of recently over the past few years, this was actually my local team, and I definitely had some thoughts and some kind of discussions potentially about being a season ticket holder there, and really kind of trying to support Brentford and hope that they have success. Unfortunately, over the past few seasons, they've lost quite a lot of kind of key players that really made that team what it is, and I think the step up to the Premier League will probably be too much. I really like the signing of Christopher Ajer from Celtic. I think he can be a real kind of strong presence in that team if they were to stay up. I think he would need to play well, but apart from that, across the board, I don't see the quality to compete with a very strong Premier League. In at 19, I've got Burnley, finally getting relegated from the Premier League and back down to probably something which is, you'd say, more suited to them, which would be a championship level of football. Some of you obviously might think that's a little bit harsh, and obviously I've been proven wrong on this many times before, but Sean Dyche, it just looks like that kind of same formula is going to get a little bit tired, and I just wonder if they can go again without that quality to compete at the top end, so I do have Burnley going down this year. In at 18, and also facing the drop for me, is going to be Southampton Football Club. Now, I know last season there were some real bright sparks and they were doing incredibly well, especially early on. If we're being honest though, guys, the loss of somebody like Danny Ings is absolutely massive. Obviously, we've heard rumours about somebody like James Ward-Prowse potentially leaving as well. I wonder how much that will affect his performances. And the players that have come in are largely kind of unproven players with potential upside, but I'm just not entirely sure personally if they're going to be able to live up to it. I do actually really like Ralph Hasenhüttl as manager, and I think that, he's got great potential, especially in a bigger team. I think he could have some serious success. But for right now, I just don't think this team has enough. And losing Danny Ings, and if they fail to replace him, it's not going to be a good year for the Saints, in my opinion. Just staying up by the skin of their teeth, I have Norwich in 17th. Look, losing the best player in your team just as you're about to kind of have a step up in level of competition, those things don't really add up. Losing Emi Buendia is going to be a huge loss. I do like a couple of the pickups for Norwich. I think Josh Sargent from Werder Bremen has definitely some upside, and I think we've seen glimpses of the quality of somebody like Billy Gilmore for that midfield for Norwich, and obviously the style this season you'd imagine is going to be somewhat different to it was last season. In at 16, I have Watford. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, you seem kind of weirdly high on Watford in terms of their positioning above the teams where you've got them, but looking at their squad and just kind of the way they played last year, there's enough Premier League experience in there where you'd think there'd be enough kind of snagged wins and enough cheeky draws here and there, just enough for them to get by. I do expect anywhere from, realistically, maybe even 15, 14, all the way down to be relatively close this year. In at 15, I have Brighton. First of all, I don't personally believe that the loss of Ben White is going to be that big of a deal, and I'm really pleased for Brighton fans to get as much money as they did. I do not think defensively there's going to be that big of a drop-off for Brighton. We know the issue for Brighton. Obviously, Graham Potter has that fantastic XG kind of philosophy rating where, if he had some better finishers around his system, then you'd be talking about potentially like a top 4 team. We know that the difficulty is going to be putting the ball in the net. Now, I like Mwepu, who's been signed from RB Salzburg, and a couple of the other players as well, Benfica signings, Ajax signings. Younger players with kind of a bit more upside. But realistically, I do think it'll probably be a repeat of last year. Solid enough defensively, but then going forward, just a lot of missed opportunities. Finishing in 14th, and a team that I really am rooting for this season purely because I like some of the pieces they have and I'm a big fan of the manager. Obviously, we've got Patrick Vieira with Crystal Palace. Now, I've not seen him play very much, if at all, but Mark Guehi from Chelsea for £18 million. I mean, that seems like a lot of money to be spending on somewhat of an unknown quantity, so they must see something they like. Patrick, more importantly, must see something he likes. Michael Elise from Reading looks like he has some serious upside as well, and obviously somebody like Joachim Andersen as well is familiar with English football from Lyon. I think that could potentially be a really, really good signing too. I have Newcastle United finishing 13th. I think at this point, we kind of realistically, we know what Newcastle are, and we certainly know what Steve Bruce is at this point. Steve Bruce is never going to really develop you and make you into a much better team. He's not that kind of manager, but he's not going to do anything in terms of letting you down and making mistakes. He won't lose you a game or lose you a tournament, but he doesn't strike me as the manager in terms of the tactical prowess and the coaching ability to be able to then elevate you from where you're at. I understand his difficult position at Newcastle with obviously the ownership and whatnot, but I think Newcastle about 13th is right. In 12th, I have Leeds United. First of all, I think signing somebody like Junior Firpo shows, a lot of good negotiating skills from Leeds, let's say. I think we know Barcelona's trouble, and to kind of benefit from that at a price of £12.8 million is a really nice upgrade in that spot for Leeds. Getting Jack Harrison from Man City was kind of a must, really. That's certainly what it felt like. I just think that with Bielsa, I love the way his football teams play. Any neutral loves watching Leeds United play, but for me, there's always those games where they do get caught out tactically and it doesn't quite work out. Always makes for entertaining football, but for me, I think sitting around 12th is probably about right for Leeds this year. In at 11, I have Wolverhampton Wanderers. Jose Sarr replacing Rui Patricio, I don't think that's going to be too big of a drop-off. I do think Rui Patricio's Wolves career was a very, very successful one. He put in some good performances. Obviously great to have him at Roma and try and solve some of the goalkeeping issues that we have had. Again, similar to Leeds, getting somebody like Trincao on loan from Barcelona I think is a smart move as well. The main reason though, I have them in this kind of ballpark around, Leeds United and the team I'm probably going to name next. Getting somebody like Raul Jimenez back is massive. That's like signing a £30-40 million striker back in the team. I think Pedro Neto will continue to improve. I know he's struggling obviously with injuries and whatnot, but I think that team will get better. Obviously a new manager, we don't know what it's necessarily going to look like, and Nuno Espirito Santo has been good for a long time, but I think hovering around 11th is probably about right for this Wolves team. Now, here's obviously the kind of important bit. I think this is where a lot of people are going to find it slightly more difficult this year, because I think that there is, generally speaking, a pretty big difference between the top 10 and the bottom 10. But what I'm pleased to say is that I think that competitive nature of both sides will make for a really good, entertaining league this year. In 10th, I have Everton. Andros Townsend coming in, good, solid Premier League player. He's going to be a good kind of squad rotation player. And even as a starter, I don't think it's too much of a downgrade from what they might already have. They're going to hope for Calvert-Lewin to kind of generally develop and express himself a little more like he did last year. Richarlison has that star quality. We'll see what happens with James Rodriguez. Defensively solid enough, but I do think the change from Carlo Ancelotti to Rafa Benitez could maybe ruffle some feathers, and it might take some getting used to. 9th place, I have Arsenal. Yes, Arsenal fans, before you start screaming at me, your squad, manager, whatever you want to call it, your club in general is about a mid-table Premier League team right now, so this should come as no surprise. Lokonga certainly looks kind of promising, Tavares also kind of promising, and we could look at the 50 million spent on Ben White in 10 years and say what a fantastic deal it was for a guy who maybe won you a few cups, got you top 4 a couple of times, captain of your club. But as of right now, I don't see enough changes. The deadwood has not left the club. The Xhaka deal, for example, people like Lucas Torreira, El Neni, I don't know what's going on. 9th for Arsenal, I think, is about right. In at 8th position, I have Spurs. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, that seems a little low, like especially with some of the players that have been brought in as well. I do like what Bryan Gil could potentially be from Sevilla. I do think Christian Romero is a great centre-back, but I think losing somebody like Toby Alderweireld cannot be understated. Also, the impact of this off-season so far on Harry Kane. I still believe he will stay at Spurs this year, but are we going to get another top goal scorer, top assister type season? I'm not so sure. With a new manager, new ideas, new styles of play, new dressing room dynamics, I think there's enough quality from the likes of Kane, Son, those kinds of guys to do enough. But I do expect some shock losses and some games that they should win being draws from this team this season. So I've got Spurs in 8th. In 7th position, I have Aston Villa. Similar to another team that I will get to shortly, I cannot tell you how much I like the business that Aston Villa have done this summer. Emi Buendia is a great deal. Ashley Young for a free, and probably not asking for too much money, is a great deal. Leon Bailey from Bayer Leverkusen is a great deal. Danny Ings, 25 mil, maybe a little bit expensive, but still getting Danny Ings is a great deal. Axel Tuanzebe on loan, I believe there's an option to buy there as well. Potentially high upside, great deal. Losing Jack Grealish is a shame, but trust me, give it 6 months, 12 months, Leon Bailey might make you forget all about Jack Grealish. Same goes for Emi Buendia. You don't know what these guys are capable of. And the fact that the money has been spent across multiple players of good quality, I think that what Jack Grealish brings to this Villa team is going to be totally offset immediately by the players that have been brought in. In at 6th, I have West Ham United. I think we are kind of building to that position of Everton 2.0 with this David Moyes side. The big thing for them in this off-season was obviously keeping the likes of a Declan Rice. It seems so far that they have managed to do that, while also there's a bit more experience and another season under the belts for a lot of the new signings who've looked very promising. I expect to see somebody like Said Benrahma to take another step this year as well. I honestly believe I'm maybe by myself in thinking that Jared Bowen is the most underrated player in the whole league. I think he's a fantastic player. We know what we're going to get from Mikel Antonio. We know they're going to be strong defensively. And Lucas Fabianski just recently retired from international football, club football being his whole focus. And Alphonse Areola on loan from PSG this year is a smart pickup as a backup too. Getting into some real contenders now. In 5th position, I have Liverpool. I think you all know this at this point. If you don't freshen up and kind of rotate that kind of attacking option that you have, it becomes stale, it becomes predictable. And I think we've seen a slow kind of regression of that nature for this Liverpool team with Salah, Firmino and Mane. It's very important this year that somebody like a Diogo Jota steps up and really kind of makes a claim for one of those spots. Not replacing Gini Wijnaldum thus far is obviously going to be a major issue as well. He was an integral part of that team. We've seen rumours about Jordan Henderson leaving too, and also Virgil van Dijk, who I've got to be honest, I don't really believe the hype with him as much as James does. But Virgil van Dijk coming off the type of injury he's had for the size of the man that he is, it's concerning. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to be surprised if Liverpool make top 4. Hell, Liverpool, especially with fans back at Anfield, they could even win the league. That's how I believe that there really are kind of 5 contenders for the title this year. But from just my general read on how things might go here, I'm not so sure. So, I mentioned earlier in the video that I like 2 teams' business a great deal. This is that other team. In 4th position, Leicester City. Patson Daka is a beast for Red Bull Salzburg, and I expect him, when called upon, I don't know if he starts straight away, but when called upon, I think we're going to see some flashes of his brilliance as well. Boubakary Soumaré coming in from Ligue 1 champions Lille for 17 million, just in case a James Maddison, a Tielemans or an Ndidi is sold for big money. Another fantastic deal. Ryan Bertrand for free from Southampton as well is fantastic. It'll just be enough to keep James Justin honest and working hard. I've kind of said this for a long time now. I do believe that Brendan Rodgers is quite possibly the best coach in the league and maybe the best coach in the world. I've always questioned his management decisions, but over the course of the past few years, I think we've seen those get better and better. With Kelechi Iheanacho, some promising attacking players, always going to be strong defensively, and obviously a great presence in goal with Kasper Schmeichel, I think that this Leicester team can definitely secure top 4. In 3rd place, I have Chelsea. Guys, the Lukaku deal is huge, but trust me, maybe a bold prediction on my part, I do not know if Romelu Lukaku will produce a better league season than the one he had last year at Inter Milan. All the stars aligned for him. In terms of formation, in terms of supporting cast around him, in terms of the manager, I mean, I don't know if we're going to see that Lukaku again. I still fully expect 25 goals plus and to be an absolute threat, but Chelsea are going to have to change the way they play. People will be sacrificed, and honestly, I've kind of had this opinion. If we get to kind of around Christmas time, just before Christmas, and Chelsea are languishing maybe 6th or around there, is it going to surprise any of you if we have a change of management in there as well? I don't like the Tomori sale. I think he was let go far too cheap. Guehi, I guess we'll see, the guy who went to Crystal Palace. And if Tammy Abraham is sold to Roma, I expect him to do very well at Roma. So, couple of questionable decisions in there, but let's see how Chelsea do. I still think there's way too much quality for them to finish outside the top 4. And if we're being realistic, just like with Leicester City and just like with Liverpool, these teams could all win the league. Okay, kind of down to the big ones now. Second position, we know which two clubs are left. Second, I'm going with Manchester City. The Grealish deal for me, you've arguably overspent by double the amount. I would personally value Jack Grealish around that kind of 45 to 50 million pound mark personally. So I think they've overspent in a position that they don't really need there. They really should have gone for a striker. That still kind of remains to be seen. Obviously, one prediction I was totally wrong with last season was that this Man City side was going to struggle with goals without having a proper striker. That was certainly not the case. Gundogan chipping in and Riyad Mahrez, Sterling, etc. So I'm not worried about the goals, even if they go into the season with only Gabriel Jesus as their only number 9. I learnt my lesson from last year. Moving on from Aguero was certainly important, and I think the main thing for this City squad is going to be from the heartbreak of the Champions League last year. We know what title they're going to be truly going for. I still expect the team to be very close, and honestly, I expect the whole title race this year to be very close. This is going to be kind of the closest race, I think, in recent memory, because the gap between the teams is not too strong this year. Previously, we've seen Man City and we've seen Liverpool, and the gap between the teams be very big. But as of right now, I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. Yes, as of this point, before the Friday for the first game of the season, I've got Manchester United winning the league this year. First of all, Jadon Sancho addresses kind of a real strong area of need, especially with Marcus Rashford being out for some period of time. We know that Jadon Sancho can lock down that right-sided wing position. We know at centre-back, the upgrade with somebody like Raphael Varane's quality is a huge upgrade as well. But it's not really about the transfers. It's more about having fans back at Old Trafford. Manchester United and their home form was not as good last year, and I wonder if that was part of the reason behind it. And their away form, I think, if memory serves me correctly, was actually the best in the league. If you couple that away form with potential improvements in the home form, I think that you have an incredibly strong squad going forward. I expect Edinson Cavani to be fantastic this season once he gets up and running and playing. And then Bruno Fernandes, we know what's going to happen with him as well. So for me, I do expect this season to be very close. I don't feel super strongly about Manchester United winning the league. But as it sits right now, that's just who I see potentially getting over the line in a very close one in the last couple game weeks of the season. Guys, let me know what you think. Where am I wrong on this one? This is going to be kept as record. Obviously, once the transfer window ends and Man City sign Harry Kane, things might change on my Premier League table. Obviously, Liverpool haven't really made any major signings yet themselves. We don't know what's going to happen going forward with a bunch of different players. Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your predictions prior to the first game of the season, prior to some of these signings. Let me know where you think these teams will finish. Until next time, I'll see you.